Welcome to Brea Talks, an insider's look into topics that affect your experiences in the city of Brea. Whether you live, work, or play here, we're bringing you the information you need to better understand your city. So now, we invite you to listen in as Brea Talks.
Hello and welcome. I'm Liz Pharis, and today, Brea Talks, a city's development process. With me today, friend of the show, Brea Assistant City Manager and Community Development Director, Jason Killebrew. Jason, thank you so much for coming back to chat with us.
Thank you, Liz, for having me. Always a pleasure to join Brea Talks.
I know you were on the show a few seasons back, but please, let's, refresh our memories about your career in development and what exactly your role is here at the city of Brea.
Absolutely. So, not a secret, but I am a diehard California kid. And so I have not left a 50-mile radius per se from where I was born and raised in Pasadena, California, to where I went to school in Cal State Fullerton, and then working for a variety of different agencies throughout Southern California. So those agencies, mostly from a professional planning standpoint, have been Santa Clarita, City of Pasadena, City of Eastville, County of Riverside, and made my way over to Brea as the city planner back in 2020.
All right. And I think when you first were on the show, were you already assistant city manager too? I think you were just community development director.
Yeah. So it was a while back. So happy to share. I've been in this role for a little over 18 months as the slash, right?
Yes,
slash
dual role.
Assistant city manager. So still holding on to community development department and leading the city's development activities, both from a building and physical development side as well as economic development.
So speaking of physical and economic development in the city, tell me a little more about your exact role as community development director that you play in both.
Yeah, so it's a unique role, I would say, for the city. It's something that I do enjoy, and the reason I do enjoy it is because sometimes I'm that fork, right? I'm that fork in the road between, planning, zoning, building, permitting, and, economic development, driving, the city from either a workforce standpoint or from a sales tax and revenue generating standpoint, a business attraction standpoint. So to see something, especially in my role, that starts from A and ends in Z in the actual, trying to attract and bring a business to the city and then see that business actually open its doors so the community can benefit from it is very rewarding. And as the community development director, having that imprint to see it start from, Genesis to Revelation is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So let's start at that beginning part. What sets the parameters of what can get developed in the city, right? I mean, we're so lucky in Brea to have a little bit of everything, the way I call it. And so how do things get decided? Why are things in certain areas? Why is there shops in one place, but housing in another, parks in one point?
Yeah, it's all set by policy, and as the community development director, as well as the assistant city manager, I have an ability to influence that in a way, but ultimately it's the city council that is the policymaker. So as technical professionals, we give recommendations to the city council, and most of those recommendations are encompassed in our general plan as well as our zoning documents. And so the general plan is the long-term vision for what the city would look like in, say, 25, 30 years. So we set kind of a forecast horizon. And in that we have, zoning and land use, which basically is what you described of, where does certain types of development, certain types of uses and businesses happen, where are our parks and our open space. And then that also then translates into just understanding the balance of what the city will look like in the future by way of jobs, by way of population increases by way of how people move around, whether it's roadways or bikeways or other modes of transportation. So the general plan is kind of that guiding document, if you will, of what the city looks like today and what it'll look like in the future.
Okay, so it's very intentional. But could there also be outside factors like any state requirements that might play in there a little bit too?
Yeah, I chuckle with that because as part of the general plan, every 8 years, cities throughout the state of California are mandated to, if you will, to take a look at their housing, take a look at their housing stock, see if their policies are actually producing housing. And the chuckle is really a laugh, and some people may say that's cynical, but it's changing every day. And so every day there is some either a new concept, new legislation, new principle that we have to react to, and it's very hard when you're looking at a general plan and you're trying to be proactive and trying to see that vision when you still have these things trickling down from Sacramento as mandates, as required tos, and trying to balance, basically that dynamic, and understanding that, it's not a one size fits all. So what's the best that we can do for Brea?
Well, that's a great segue. Regarding development in a city, let's start small. Single-family residences, repurposed buildings. Where do you start the process with those regarding developments? How does it all get started?
So, I think there's this misconception that the city builds. And so that's one thing that I do want to clear up. The city is a neutral entity. So the city basically will create development opportunity, will create a fabric, if you will, for what things should look like. But 90% of the time, and I'll leave the 10% reserved to the city does have some assets, but 90% of the time it is going to be driven by the interests and the property rights of private owners.
Okay.
Private property owners, private developers. But starting small, it's as simple as, a person wants to do an ADU on their house, or they want to do a pool in their backyard. Those have regulations, those have requirements, and those get reviewed by the community development department. And so long that it fits in those boxes, a property owner has those rights and entitlements to do those things, and we move it forward.
Okay. Now let's move to bigger projects, commercial industrial development, sometimes demolishing an existing building to make space for something new. Take us through that process. How does that get started?
So every building has a life, and I know this may be a topic that some residents or business owners may disagree with me because, they like it like the good old days. But, most buildings are made out of either, concrete or steel or wood. And the life of those particular items, those commodities, are not endless. And so you end up in a situation a lot of times where you may be putting Band-Aid fixes on a lot of different things because of the age of the structure. And then what happens is a costing exercise of, hey, all these Band-Aids are adding up to a certain dollar amount. Hey, the building is X years old. It may make sense at this point to just start anew because we own the land. And as we all know in California, land is a really valuable asset. So, that's usually what you'll start seeing, those conversations for demolition. And then the second is, well, what can we do? And so a lot of times if there's an age of structure issue or there's even a conversation of demolishing a structure, it's usually because, those Band-Aids that I mentioned, but also that when they previously built or got permits to build whatever it was, our requirements now may allow for a bigger building or may allow for a taller building. And so there's also that's factored into the costing is, hey, we may be able to maximize our land a little bit better. And usually that's the start of those conversations.
So just to follow up on that, what's the relationship between a property owner and a city, right? There's this balance of what a city can say, no, you can't do, or what are you allowed to do. Let's go on a granular level and talk about how does that get started? How does the flow of that go to get you from point A to point Z?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me kind of go back to a previous statement that I made. So you may have a life of structure, age of structure conversation, and you may have had different requirements, a different general plan, different zoning. Let's just call it 3, 4, 5 decades ago. And so generally, as a city has adapted to growth, has adapted to new legislation, and we've put those into revised policies that have been approved over time, that does create capacity because one of the core principles of the city of Brea, it's even in our logo, is the hills. And so what we've heard resoundingly is protect the hills. We don't want to see any type of development in the hills, but we need to accommodate that growth, and we need to accommodate, modernizing, certain development techniques or development trends. And so what that generally has done is it's created more capacity. It's created more flexibility in these types of zoning and land uses that then get applied to these properties. So when we have those conversations with a property owner ready to demolish, generally they're going to have more property rights, more availability to increase square footage, intensify their property than they were, let's say, 4 or 5 decades ago when the requirements were probably more strict. And so that's a combination of, the city, again, protecting its hills, but then also, the legislation basically saying for these types of uses, they shall be allowed. And so that's where the city is doing that balance of making sure, again, it still is within, I would say the character of the city, but then also is something that is beneficial and worthwhile for a property owner to try to go from something that's outdated to something that's modernized and appropriate for today. And so regarding where that begins is generally an inquiry that comes to us, honestly, a city council member, because they are the most prominent representation of the city. They're the most accessible. They're automatically, perceived as city leaders because they are. What a lot of people don't realize is I, as the community development director and assistant city manager, my role and responsibility is to support the mayor and the city council. So those meetings generally will include, the mayor as one council member, just kind of being there to make sure that I'm doing my job right, but also me as the technical lead. And so we'll talk in concepts. Generally, a property owner has an idea, especially if they own an asset in the city that's worth millions of dollars. They're going to have their team or assistance in understanding what the laws are, what they can and cannot do. And so it starts with a concept. And in that concept, we discuss, refinements. We discuss, hey, this is what we're hearing at the community sidewalk level, the coffee shop level. And then, any changes in policy that would need it to support whatever it is they're doing. And then from there, that usually comes back with a pass off to most likely the city planner after I given some level of direction on what that property owner needs to do. And then the city planner works with that property owner in submitting what we call a formal application, which is the only way to get a real response on that concept to make it more real as it moves through either planning entitlements or it goes directly into building permits.
So at the end of the day, a developer, a property owner, right? They're going to do their due diligence. They're going to do their research and bring in something to the city that's going to be of value to them. And the city's responsible for balancing that out and making sure it fits.
Yeah, absolutely. So both from a regulatory, statutory, space of trying to figure out does it fit within the box of our policies, our general plan zoning, all of that good stuff. But then, the delicate dance I also have to do is there's some level of community benefit as well. And trying to influence and shape that is a really tightrope dance, if you will, of making sure that, one, I don't put the city in a situation of liability, and then also making sure we don't scare a good business away. And so it really is a delicate negotiation, if you will, of trying to propel the property owners' rights, and their interests, while also sprinkling in, the city's desires from a community benefit standpoint.
Because at the end of the day, it's just it's got to work out on both ends. As a city, we want a particular business or development to succeed just as much as the developer does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to touch on one last thing, you mentioned that the conversations with the property owner usually starts with you, but you keep the conversation going throughout the project, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's exactly correct for two reasons. One, I'm essentially, in most instances, kind of the first real person that a property owner or developer has true interaction with. And as that lead, and I do that pass off to, the city planner, the building official, or our community development manager who runs economic development, in that pass off, they still report to me. And so along the way, just ensuring that the process is smooth, that the developer is receiving the resources and the service that our city council expects that we give. I am that kind of, main contact person for the developer. And so I interact and engage and communicate almost on a weekly basis when we have major things in the hopper, just to make sure that everything is flowing and everything is moving in a positive direction.
Almost just like customer service.
Exactly.
Okay, let me, you mentioned earlier how there's examples of repurposing buildings and some complete demolitions. And I think we're in a time in Brea right now where we have examples of both types of developments happening. Can you share a little about those?
Yeah, I'll share a couple that I'm very proud and excited for. And so, it's no secret to the world that the movie industry has changed dramatically in a post-COVID environment. Mm-hmm. And, I would say the city of Brea was very movie theater rich, given, we had three major movie theater venues and, still a population in the mid 40,000s. And so that is something that I think was very unique. But with that, it came challenges, right? So as the market shifted in the movie industry and the moviegoers world, we saw, two movie theaters essentially go defunct. And the cool thing about repurposing, that square footage, both at the Brea Plaza, which now has turned into a Barnes and Nobles, which we're excited to see the resurgence of that type of retailer, and them picking Brea as kind of the start of that resurgence is something very exciting. To Main Event occupying our West Movie Theater downtown, to answer the request that we've heard for decades of, hey, we're a family community. We want something that the whole family can do from an entertainment standpoint that's not just a restaurant and not just a movie. So, that was really exciting from a repurposing standpoint, those two projects. Mm-hmm. From a complete demolition to ground up development, we saw a bank turn into a Fogo de Chao. Yeah. That's something that really, really excited. So most people bank now I couldn't tell you the last time I went into an actual bank, but most people bank, either on their phone or their computers, just because technology has proven security over time and people are comfortable with that. And so you don't need a 2,000, 3,000 square foot, with staff tellers and all of these different things. And so we saw at the Brea Imperial Center a full service bank change more into a consolidated ATM and kiosk environment, which left a pad of land on the corner of State College and Imperial Highway that was primed for something special. And, here comes, again, Fogo de Chao, that is, world-renowned Brazilian barbecue. And one unique, and you guys may want to fact check me on this, but one unique thing, at least at the time, was they would go into previously occupied spaces. So they go into old restaurants or old buildings. And what was very unique and special for Brea is they actually built a flagship from the ground up restaurant in Southern California, which I believe was first of its kind, at least at the time. And one of the things I'm most proud of is as we were going through, and it's a beautiful building, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people drive by it a day. We saw that as an opportunity. So working with the property owner, we actually rotated the building 180 degrees so that the glass from the dining room actually faced Imperial Highway rather than the parking lot. And I think that is a touch that as you're driving by and you see the chandeliers and you see the activity of the knives getting, cutting meat onto to plates in the table, you're like, oh, what's, if you didn't know about it, you're like, oh, that place looks cool. Yeah. And then it just creates that curiosity, which again is, sometimes economic development is curiosity, so people are like, oh, let's come back, let's research it, let's try it. And then they fall in love.
Right. And again, just a great example of working together, right? And figuring out, here's some options from the city to elevate the property.
Absolutely.
A partnership is born.
Yes.
Just to kind of wrap things up, right? A lot of great information you've shared. We talked about balancing, right? Balancing the community's needs with, property owners' rights, right? So, when it comes to the community and their concerns, what is the most effective way for either people to get involved, be heard, whether you are a property owner or you're a community member and you have an idea, you have an opinion, you have a question? What's the best way that someone can voice that?
So there's a variety of ways. So I will leave it to the listener to decide which one's best for them. But another worst kept secret is my mean mug, and all of my contact information is on the city's website. So one thing that I will say is I try to be as accessible to the community as possible, and I really mean that. But there's a variety of different things. So one thing I'm very, very proud of the city of Brea does is if you were to do a simple search, whether it's Google, and did Brea's projects in process, or even just Brea projects, will get you to this link. It has a list of all of our active major projects in a variety of different status. So it could be just submitted, it could be approved and entitled, and it can be under construction following permit review. So that's one way. Another way is also to, subscribe to our social media. We will do updates from a economic development standpoint, as well as upcoming planning commission hearings. And so that is a easy way. I know a lot of us are on our phones all the time, so that is a very easy way to stay informed. And the other thing is, just coming to planning commission and city council meetings, understanding, on a consistent basis, hey, what is the city doing? What are its visions? What are the actions that are happening at your local meetings? And coming with a spirit of understanding and collaboration is, I think, really, really important. What I've seen to be the most fruitful and effective way of being that steward in the community of, whether it's representation or it's sharing concepts and ideas, but coming with, solutions. I don't know everything. I don't think anyone in City Hall, even collectively, we know everything. And so we welcome that engagement. And so that is something that you can always do. And then for individual projects that have impact areas, we do send out mail notices. Some projects will have, posting on the actual property itself. So if you're walking your dog, or following your kids riding their bikes, you can get that information. That'll also include contact information to our planning team as well. So there's a variety of different ways, and we do that on purpose because, there's a variety of different comfort levels of people, and we just want to make sure that we present as many of those opportunities to engage and communicate as possible.
No, that's great. Well, Jason, thank you so much for coming on today and for helping us understand a little more about the process of development in cities. I've worked in government for a long time, but I learned many new things today just chatting with you.
Yeah, happy to be here. And, shout out to the Brea community for making it the best community in Orange County. And, if there's any follow-up, again, feel free to reach out and find information on our website. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's it for this episode of Brea Talks. This episode and all episodes of Brea Talks can be heard wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on Brea TV and on our Brea TV app. Don't forget to follow, like, subscribe, rate, and review. And we'll see you next time. Thanks again for listening in as Brea Talks.